So here we are,
Good morning.
Second Friday in June, technically, even though it feels like it's the first Friday. But maybe that's because I was gone for a while. So I'm back.
Yes,
Yay!
welcome back.
Thank you. It's good to be back, sort of.
Happy to have you.
I mean, it was kind of nice to have 2 weeks of just trying really hard not to think about work. So it was fun. It was fun. We did a little bit of traveling, did a little bit of stuff close to home, and yeah, had a good had a good time. Although my kids are
Nice.
like, I don't want to go anywhere. I'm done going places. I just want to be home and relax.
I get that.
Yeah. Me, I'm like, let's go somewhere else. They're like, no, no.
What
We're
was what was your favorite part? Your favorite thing you did?
oh goodness. Well, it was hard to get the kids out a lot because, oh, teenagers. But we were in Boston, and we walked from our hotel to the public garden, which is probably a good 20-minute walk from Faneuil Hall over to Public Garden. But beautiful weather, just absolutely gorgeous weather. And my kids wanted to ride the swan boat around the little lake. So it was fun. A little,
Aw,
family time, and just this little boat that they paddle around the lake, and you go around, you get to see all the stuff, and there's ducks everywhere, and it was nice.
love that. Yeah,
Yeah.
I've never been to Boston. I would love to go.
Oh, it's wonderful. It's wonderful. In fact, quite a few years ago, I had a girlfriend who just absolutely talked about Boston all the time and loved it. And I was like, "What's the big deal with Boston?" And and now that I've been, I get it. I
Yeah.
really like it. It's a great city. It's very walkable. We got great transportation. But we
Yeah.
mostly walked. They were absolutely not interested in any American history at
Oh,
all. I'm
no.
like, "Oh, look, here's the site of the Boston Massacre, and here's the first state house, and blah, blah," going on and on. They're like,
We're hungry.
Let's go see Paul Revere. Go see his statue, and then to the church where he did his thing, and then, look, they have the lanterns there. Let's see. One if
Still
by land,
historical,
two
I
if by
guess.
sea.
Yeah.
They couldn't care less. So I
Oh.
walked that part on my own and
Oh.
went up there. Got some stuff at Mike's Pastries, and, got some cannolis, all the fun, some cupcakes. They did like the cupcakes, so, it wasn't a total loss. But yeah, it's a neat town. I just love the fact that bustling city, but also has all of this great history. They've got markers on the sidewalks for the Freedom Trail, so you can follow around to some of the historic spots. There's lots of really old cemeteries with cool headstones and stuff that look kind of bizarre from today's viewpoint, but they're pretty neat. They've got like devils and demon faces and wings and all kinds of really cool stuff on them. So there's some like from the anywhere from the 1600s to the 1800s on some of those grave sites. So it's pretty neat. Ken, you've been to
Wow.
Boston a few times, haven't you?
I have. I think
Or a
what they
lot?
need mostly, yeah, I think what they need is a one of those geek trails. Like instead of the Freedom Trail, you have the trail that goes over to MIT and to Harvard. So this is where the UNIVAC was. This is where the chip was developed. This is where, all this kind of cool stuff. The Digital Media Lab at MIT is incredible. But I'm geeking out on you now.
No, no, that's okay. I used to go to when I lived in Southern California. I used to go to the JPL open house, Jet Propulsion Lab. Um, Incredible, so cool. Totally geeked out over all the stuff they had for space, and this was pre-Mars trips, but just all the cool things that they had, and you could talk to the people that were running some of the projects and stuff, and I was totally geeking out there. So I would get behind a geek tour.
Well, I think a combination would be kind of cool where like the folks on your chat are talking about staycations. What if you lived in Boston and you had a staycation in Boston? Would be a great place to just, live for 3 or 4 years and just do all the cool things you can do.
Mhm.
Totally.
You know what's funny is I used to live in a tourist area, and I if I do a staycation, unfortunately, I stay home. I don't actually
Mm.
do stuff local. Oh, I'll do some stuff around the house and fix things. But yeah, sometimes it is good to play tourist in your own hometown because there's stuff that you may not go to think about very often. Then all of a sudden you're like, I should do these fun things. I like to do that when I have friends in from out of town. Then I'll play tour guide, and then I will play kind of like a local tourist and show them all the cool stuff and everything.
Yeah. When we lived in St. Louis, we ended up getting so many people either passing through or, whatever it was. And we ended up going up in the arch like 8 times. And sometimes we would have like friends, from St. Louis come with us and they would have lived there their whole life. And that was the first time they were going up in the arch. So yeah.
We used to have school trips up to St. Louis every year, and without fail, we would go up in the arch. It's
Yeah.
it's a pretty neat view.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
really cool. So Lou's saying walking without going outside. I guess this is for Charles. It sounds like you would enjoy the underground city in Montreal. That sounds cool.
Yeah.
That sounds really cool. Yeah, staycations are nice because Boston was expensive.
Yeah.
It was so expensive.
I hope you went to the
What
North End and did something. Did you go to North End at all? Any Italian food or anything?
I didn't do the Italian food, but I went to Mike's. So I went to
Awesome.
Mike's
See, that
Pastry on the
counts.
north end.
That
Yeah.
counts.
So
Yeah,
close enough.
Hanover Street.
I
Yeah.
walked by all of the Italian places on the way to church. But yeah, so much good food in Boston. It was amazing. I had some awesome clam chowder and scallops, and had to go by Union Oyster House just because it's one of the oldest restaurants and things like that. Dennis has lives near DC and has never been up the Washington Monument.
That's a
It
common
happens.
thing. Have you ever been to
Yeah.
Ebbett's Grill at least, Dennis? Because you have to go to Ebbett's if you live in DC.
Oh yeah, I've
Yes.
been to
See,
Ebbett's
he's
Yeah.
been there.
Grill.
So
See,
that
yeah,
counts.
I know. When I visited DC, I went to Lincoln Memorial and all of that, and you see pictures of people, but you just don't understand the sheer size
Yeah.
until you're standing there. It's like, wow.
Yeah.
So,
DC is a neat town.
yeah, Dennis says yes. So Dennis has been to Ebbett's Grill as well. Good,
You guys
and
should
of
have a
course.
meetup there, one of your Jump Cloud meetups at Ebbett's.
Oh, well,
Totally.
yeah. I mean, we've had several, and Tom has arranged those because he lives in DC and he knows all the spots. But one of these days, I'm gonna actually get up there while they're doing it. It's just the drive and the traffic, but I will eventually. All right. Well, we've had some fun catching up because it has been. It feels like it's been forever.
Has been.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, hopefully the last 2 weeks went okay. I was going to check in, but then I'm like, "No, I'm not supposed to be thinking about work, so I'm gonna let them handle it. I'm not gonna harass them in the comments. I'm just gonna stay away." So,
I'd say they went pretty well. Hopefully everyone agrees. But
well,
we had a neat couple episodes. I mean, I know you know, but
yeah.
yeah, having Raj on last week was awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. I bet that was really cool. I do have to go back and watch that one for sure because
Yeah.
I was excited about that case study, and then of course the timing was just where I was out, and I was like, "Darn it!"
I know.
I wanted to
Yeah.
be
But
there.
it was
That's
a cool
okay.
episode.
Yeah. Well, we didn't lose any subscribers, so I think you did all right. The number is still the same, so you're good. You're all good. All
Cool.
right. So, for those of you who are joining us and maybe new, Dr. Ken Russell has been a guest of the show before. He's a good friend of mine, and we've known each other for quite a few years, going on. What is it
30,
now?
25, 30 years. I don't know.
I'm not that old. I don't know about you. I don't know where you came up with that number. I don't know. Maybe at least over 10 years,
Yeah.
and he's CIO, Chief Innovation Officer at New College Institute in Virginia, just a couple hours across the border from us. And he's got some cool stuff to talk about today. We're going to talk about what they're doing at NCI with AR and VR, and going a little bit into Worldwide Developers Conference and their I don't know, AR, VR, or even MR, mixed reality new headset, Vision Pro. But first, we will do our usual community news, see if there's any meetup news, and then product, and then jump into our discussion. So let me find my list. Hee hee. All right. So there is a new question in the community that hasn't been answered yet. Someone is asking about a jump cloud icon missing from the task tray in Windows. So if you are familiar and can help with that, please jump in. Excuse me. Jurgen has done another script, this time Windows PowerShell bulk importer for custom policies. So always some great stuff coming from him and Sean Song. So make sure you go check that out in the scripts repo. Pam has written a really great blog article about being an ally in the office. And with this being Pride Month, I definitely think you should go check that out about being, an ally in June, but really all year round and what you can do to be a good ally. With the news of the brand new OS that's, coming out, and I think there's already a version available for a beta from Mac OS. Tom has posted a reminder about betas and Jump Cloud in the software hardware forum that I wanted to point out because we don't support betas on Jump Cloud in production. So be careful if you are doing that. Probably better that you don't test that in production. Maybe have a stage environment or a testing environment that you're doing that, because we can try to help a little bit with troubleshooting, but really we don't support those. So proceed with caution. Caveat emptor. And couple of things on the community news side, on the community itself. Oracle has discontinued their support for the add this button function, which allows you to share posts on social media. I don't think people were really using those much anyway, but it has been discontinued. So that option has been removed. So you'll no longer see that on posts. I wrote a very brief blog post about it, and another blog post about the board, board consolidation that we asked about a couple months ago. And so I went ahead and did that this week. So hardware and software are now one board, and networks and security are one board. So that should help with, making it a little bit easier to navigate. And also, a couple of those boards weren't super active, so it was better to just better to go ahead and get those together. And if the traffic becomes big enough on those boards, we can always break them out again. All right. I think that is it. Alexa, did you have any meetup updates yet?
Not really. So I know I've been kind of teasing this for a little bit now, but we are just taking a look as we approach summer, looking at that calendar, making sure everything is convenient for everyone. And then also we are just taking a look at the overall structure, thinking about making some changes, introducing some more virtual events, and consolidating those a little bit, just to make it, again, more convenient for everybody. So not really anything to share today, but hopefully more to come soon.
Awesome. Awesome. I know we've had some requests for some virtual meetups in the EU and some other places. So
For sure.
hopefully but I also know that they take a lot of vacation during the summer. So we'll have to figure that out. I wish I could take a month-long vacation. That would be nice. Maybe we do need to consider Europe. Just kidding. Just kidding.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's just pack up and go.
Sounds nice.
All right. So product releases and announcements. Not a ton this week, although we do have our Jump Shot newsletter that came out, and David posted those in the product area and the MSP discussions area, one for customers and one for resellers and partners. So go check those out. We will make sure we have links to those as well. Um, and that is it on the news front. So, Ken, we're going to talk about what's going on with NCI. If you would like, I can share. We've got like 3 very small slides that I will pull up. Let me get it on the right spot
Yeah,
here.
while you're
And
doing that, I'll talk a bit about what I do at NCI. So folks, I've talked to this group before, but just to let you know that I wear 2 hats. One is the typical CIO hat, the Chief Information Officer, but I'm also the Chief Innovation Officer, and I love that part of my job too, because in addition to the typical just making sure ops and apps are running and that sort of stuff, we get a chance to work with all the universities in the Commonwealth of Virginia. And part of what I do is try to find unique technologies and projects to work with. So my background, you can see here, going back to my Bank of America days, my Duke Energy days, my days at Cisco. That's all there. And it's a good kind of one pager to kind of show that I've been very fortunate in my career to have the ability to work with some really interesting technologies and some very interesting verticals. So I'm trying to bring that to Virginia, to the universities and to the students. And I'd like to talk a little bit about what we're doing today with AR and VR. So Becky, I'm happy to talk about, I think maybe the Cisco hologram is probably a good one to start. I wish I had the device in front of me so I can kind of share with you, but I'm not at the office today. But you have a representation there of what we call the rig. Basically, it's 12 cameras that capture your image in a 3-dimensional kind of way. And then you have a HoloLens 2 headset. You can kind of see it on the gentleman there. So you see him kind of looking at, and what he's seeing is that picture of me and of the young lady there. She's actually in Oslo, Norway, and then he and I were in Virginia projecting ourselves to Oslo, Norway. So this is brand new from Cisco. We just got out of the NDA kind of thing with it. It's you can look it up and learn more about it, but it's really a cool technology. But what it does, it allows you to kind of bring the meetings a little bit more alive if you use WebEx and things like that. So we're one of 9 organizations globally that are working with this technology right now. So we're really excited to see where it can go. If you kind of look at to the edge of those images, you can kind of see it kind of bleeding back into the local, we call it. But I think it's just part of working through some of these bugs that you have with technology, especially leading edge technologies. And one thing that you'll notice, Becky, from what Cisco does and what Apple does is that you'll see some things from Cisco. You'll see the warts and all from Cisco. Things being put together. This idea of just the sausage making, if you will. You won't see that from our friends at Apple. What we saw the other night about the Vision Pro, pretty slick. And someday you'll get a slick version of that from Cisco, but not yet. We're still working on all that stuff. So I'm happy to be part of that team that Cisco's working with in Virginia to get some of this stuff out. What we're thinking use case wise on this is, can we put a professor anywhere in the world and then have students, anywhere in the world with just the HoloLens or similar to help them learn and participate no matter where they are.
that's really neat. I could also see medical applications as well. There's lots of ways to work on
Well,
it there.
yeah, we have advanced manufacturing too. We have at New College Institute, we also are one of the few global windmill organization training sites where folks that want to work on these large windmills that are appearing all over the world, they can practice and learn at NCI. And one of the things I'm working on with the team is, can we use the HoloLens and the hologram technologies to simulate what it feels like to be 300 feet in the air working on the nacelle of a windmill. A lot of folks want, particularly, if you think about it, a lot of young folks want to work on a big windmill. They like the idea of it. They like the idea of working outside and working on something really cool. But once you kind of get above 20 feet, most folks don't want to be that high in the air. So having the ability to simulate 300 feet and you kind of look around and say, okay, oh, this is too high for me, is pretty cool. And it kind of weeds people out pretty quickly. But we're working on that technology now with some of the Cisco stuff and some of the other things that we're doing as well. So, advanced manufacturing, education, as you said, healthcare, health tech, it kind of runs the gamut. We really like the the possibilities of the AR aspects more than the VR aspects. And I'll be very honest with you. You see the young man kind of with the headset on there. What I like about the HoloLens 2 is that it doesn't block out your vision like an Oculus does. So a true VR headset would kind of make it where you can't see outside of your world. And that makes people very claustrophobic. It makes them freak out. And the ability to have augmented reality kind of exist in your world that you're comfortable in is, I think, the way that we're going, at least from our perspective, and like we're saying with Cisco, and also with the stuff that we're doing with Dell and all those folks. But really exciting time to be involved in all this AR VR stuff, particularly with what we saw this week with Vision Pro. Even though it's not ready for prime time yet, it was quite a show.
Yeah, absolutely. We will definitely dig more into the Apple one in just a moment. But let's talk about
Yeah, focus
what you're
column.
doing
Yeah,
here.
this is well, just to give you an idea, the company we're working with is called Brainco. So that kind of tells you right there. Oh, wow. So what I love about this one, this is an association what we're doing with Dell Technologies. And we are going to be working with health tech on this one. So what we're trying to solve for, this is our problem, is that, post-pandemic, certain populations are having difficulty trying to get back into what we would call normality with regard to healthcare and health management. Specifically, folks, particularly in the Appalachian regions of Virginia, they don't really trust the medical folks much anymore after COVID. Plus, there's this anxiety of just going to the doctor's office again after not having gone to the doctor's office. So we're going to do a study this summer with some data science students from William and Mary on a qualitative and a quantitative side. On the quantitative side, it's what you think it is. Can we help this cohort of patients by putting on this headset, which is what it does. It captures your EEG. So just to your typical brainwave functions and things like that. And it also provides an 6 or 8 minute protocol, depending on what we're talking about, to help you find ways to calm yourself. Okay. Because imagine what you do. And we all do it too. We all go into the doctor's office and we're running up the stairs. We're parking in the last parking lot. We're huffing and puffing it. And the first thing they do is they put that cuff on us. It's like, well, give me 5 minutes to catch my breath. And so what this is designed to do is kind of give you a calming room where you can sit and put this headset on, follow the exercises that are on an iPhone app, quite honestly, and then, relax. And then take the readings, then take your vitals. So what we're going to try to do on the qualitative side is focus on behavior, focus on, calmness and things like that. On the quantitative side, some things that you would expect is pulse rate, blood pressure, that sort of stuff, oximeters and that kind of stuff. So really it's exciting to do that. And then having the students involved is a double whammy of good luck and good fortune for us, because we're going to be able to get a white paper out of this one, and maybe a really good use case for what does it take to bring, or what will it take to bring a suspicious population back to the normality of what we would, 5 years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, think is just a visit to the doctor.
I just think that's so neat.
Yeah.
Coming from a very rural area myself, it can be tough to get into the doctor. It can, especially when there's a lot of weather and stuff like that. And just man, if we'd had this sort of technology a long time ago, it would have made a lot of things easier. I mean, you don't have the small town family doctor anymore, so you have to go to these big kind of conglomerates to get your
Managed
medical
care.
stuff done.
Yeah. I think it's a way to kind of ease the population into this new method of healthcare that we're emerging into. As much as I love things like my chart, which allows me on my phone to kind of look at my results and my tests. And I love that because I kind of geek out on that stuff. There is something that's missing when you don't have that, time with a physician. I think most of us are now dealing with PAs, which is fine, but we're getting like 5 minutes with a PA, and it's like, it's not a lot of time. So that adds to anxiety, that adds to mistrust and all those kind of things. So anything that we can do with a device technology to kind of help bridge that gap between the way it used to be and the way it's going to be is going to be good for us, I think.
Yeah. So how did y'all get involved or decide to start doing this, and what was the impetus for doing all this AR VR stuff
Yeah.
with, small you're in a fairly NC Eisen is a fairly small town in Virginia, and usually places like that aren't necessarily doing cutting edge, bleeding edge work with companies. So what makes y'all decide to do that?
I don't know. Maybe it's one of those hold my beer moments kind of thing. It's like, we can't do what? I'll hold my beer. Uh, I don't know. I'm usually brought in, as you know, Becky, to kind of shake things up, create disorienting dilemmas, those kind of things in organizations that need change and that need a bit of fresh air. So, in my career, I've been very fortunate to help out both in metropolitan areas and also rural areas. I think in this particular case, they were looking for something new that they could do as a state agency across the Commonwealth of Virginia. And I think a lot of times, especially in government agencies, they tend to kind of close in and gravitate to what they know. And I came in and kind of shook things up and said, you know what? Every organization, if they're going to be, moving forward, they need to have some sort of innovation element. And in this case, we called it the innovation lab. And at the innovation lab, that's where we bring new things in, and then we kind of spin things up, and then we spin things out as necessary. The idea being that if we're going to be ahead of the curve, there's got to be a place where we can kind of test and promote this stuff with our partners, like William and Mary, in a safe place where we know it's not ready for prime time, but we know we want to be part of whatever it is. And in a similar way, we're doing stuff with AI. So next month we're presenting at the Virginia Cyber Education Conference in Charlottesville to talk about how to create your own custom large language models, things like that. Those things emerge out of the innovation lab. So I was brought in specifically to see if I can kind of get people excited about what's coming ahead.
So, I've always liked testing new technology. There's some part of me, maybe because we were one of the first people in our area to have a VCR, like no one had VCRs, and I kind of might be kind of dating myself, but, for one thing, when I was growing up, there was a lot of stuff on the coast, like new cool stuff, but it took forever to get to the middle of the country. So, I mean, now everything is released everywhere and happens so quickly. But what a lot of people may not realize is it was hard to get really new, cool stuff in the middle of the country. It would be months and months before it became available. So, for whatever reason, I guess that kind of fed my love of new technology. Dad was always getting, newer technology and new toys. Um, and so getting to test new stuff like that is pretty neat. There, there are some other things you're doing with Dell too, right? Can you talk about some of that? Is that okay for consumption?
Oh,
Like
maybe.
the racing?
So, yeah, I can talk a little bit about that. So if you guys know anything about Virginia, there are a couple of NASCAR speedways in Virginia, Richmond notably, but also Martinsville, the tiny little Martinsville. Um, and if you might say Bristol too, but that's kind of more Tennessee than it is Virginia, but it's the same kind of world. But anyway, people love racing in Southern Virginia, and what's really nice about what they're trying to do is there are some technologies that allow you to use the same kind of device, the same kind of brain function to we put a headband on, and you can move race cars with your mind. I don't have any video of that right now, but I plan to have something before the October race, Becky. So bring me on later, and I'll be happy to talk about how you can kind of, and I'm going to use the what's this thing from the X-Men, being able to move things with your mind. It's really starting to happen. And it's exciting stuff because, it has applicability for all sorts of things, especially folks that currently rely on prosthetics and things like that. If we can actually find a way to connect the brain to other things, we can do a lot of cool things and help a lot of people's lives and things like that.
Yeah, so there's a lot of, you've been doing a lot of health tech stuff recently too,
Hmm.
so there's a lot
Yeah.
of
Shout out for the
applications
Health
there.
Innovation Summit, and I'm speaking at in Charlotte, September 20th. So come to Charlotte, see us to talk about all the innovations in there. And I guess the big thing about that, though, Becky, is, and my challenge to this group too, is that you don't have to go rent your innovation from somebody outside of your organization. You have within your organization the ability to innovate from the inside. And that's what I think is exciting about doing things like in Martinsville, where they don't really expect a lot of this, and they're just part of a really cool solution in their opinion. But they are, as they're kind of creating it, their minds are expanding a bit, saying, "Oh gosh, if I can do this, certainly I can do anything else." And I think that's what's exciting about innovation in this country. So whether it's health tech that we're doing in Charlotte in September, or whether it's the stuff that we're doing right now with Brainco and Dell and Cisco, it's all about kind of getting people to kind of collide together and say, well, what if, and what if I could do this? And as one of my colleagues said the other day, to get in front of that brilliance of the whiteboard, and just kind of brainstorm and ideate and work together on new and cool things, even if you're not physically together. The ability to collaborate and come up with cool ideas is inspired by doing exactly that. Just starting somewhere and doing really cool things.
Yeah, taking something and going, well, what if we did this
Hmm.
way instead? I don't think we I don't think we do enough of that a lot of times. I know that places like Google, they build it into people's um, time where you can work on innovation projects for a certain percent of your time. Um, and I think the trouble a lot of us have is it's not built in. So making the time to think about cool, new, innovative stuff. Who can we partner with? Who can we try new things with? Who can we get around a whiteboard with? And just draw things out and just see what comes of it. I think is a little harder to do, but they can also be really cool. So when I was at Cisco, they did that a lot in TAC, where some of the support engineers would take time to just figure out, well, how do we solve problems differently? How do we help people troubleshoot? And you know, some of these products that Cisco is coming out with now harken back to that, where the auto diagnostics and the self-healing network and things like that. I mean, those types of things came through because people had time to innovate and think about, well, what's coming next? How do we reduce the amount of time that we're sitting troubleshooting something? If your network can send us some files and diagnostics so we can review those and dig into things, or do self-test and then send it so that we can review it and see what we can eliminate immediately as either not the problem or something like that. So
No, I think you're right. I think I need to share a dirty little secret, though. The dirty little secret of CIOs, if that makes sense. I'll put my other hat on. So my typical chief information officer hat. Before the pandemic, our biggest problem was probably adoption. As you were saying, I mean, we could do all those things. We had the innovations, we had them queued up, and in fact, I think we still have a bunch of those in general. Most organizations have a lot of ideas that they have. They've tested, they ferreted out, they know they're good ideas, but they, for some reason, whatever the reason, they haven't had the authority or the go ahead to implement, right. And I think COVID, the pandemic, went a long, long way of showing how good IT can be in times of crisis. And I think what's happened is that, our problem now is not so much adoption, because we proved that we could do this. We could deploy, laptops and Zoom and all those kind of things, and Crowdcast, and I'll make sure I say the right name here. But we've proven that we can do that. And I think what's happened now is that CIOs typically have a greater voice, a more valued voice in the boardroom with the cabinet room or with the president or with whoever it may be. And it's not just about, parts and pieces anymore. It really is about impact of technology. And that's where I think you're seeing the value right now of what you just talked about. These innovations that maybe some of them have been queued up for years and they're just finally seeing the light of day, or maybe there's just a greater respect and a greater welcoming of that IT voice in the room to contribute to what could do if we had this access to data in a way that was kind of generative. We just kind of leave it there. But I think people are excited about that, and I think there's a new kind of era for IT leaders and IT practitioners alike to contribute to an organization's overall value.
I think some people are getting that more. I think where some of our IT folks still struggle is there are still executives who view IT as a cost center only and not a source of innovation. And
Can I tell you a quick story? I know where you're going with this, but let me tell you a quick story. I had to deal with a fellow. It was a man. It was an older man who called himself a technophobe. Okay, and it was 2016, but you can kind of get the idea. It's 2023 now. I told him then. I said you can't go around saying that because all of his customers were born digital, and you can't go saying that you're I'm just doing this or I'm just doing that. You can't be that or that. You have to be an and something. You got to be this and that. And you got to understand that technology is here. It's no longer an option to say that, I can't get this thing to work, or I'm just about, my getting my ROI on my, document here for this thing, and here's my budget, and here I've got to do. No, no, no. You've got to understand how the impact of technology is on the organization, the entire organization. It's not enough to be siloed. It's not enough to be that kind of, I'm a siloed executive or whatever else. It may be safe, or you may think it might be safe. It's not safe for long.
no, I think that's where the more we see IT and security work together, seeing that a lot more where if you don't have a CISO, then the CIO might be responsible for it. But building in security and other things to your way of doing business is really important too, because you'll become even more of a cost center if you if you don't address security and a breach happens and something like that. That can be really tough.
There's one more thing I can tell you about before we finish up this segment. This idea of cybersecurity and incident response. We've recently worked with the Virginia Department of Education to create this thing that we call incident response. Is a team sport, and the reason we did this is because we were noticing that institutions, particularly public school systems, were woefully unprepared for any kind of ransomware attack or any kind of cyber attack, that sort of thing. So what we wanted to do was gather the leadership of school systems, superintendents and their staffs, with the IT folks, which, by the way, they never really communicated together for anything unless there was an emergency. And that's not the first time that you need to meet somebody is when there's an emergency. So we wanted to kind of have an incident response tabletop kind of exercise where they could actually meet each other, get to know who they were as individuals, but also feel what it would feel like if there was a ransomware attack. So we developed this kind of simulation of a ransomware experience without affecting their real network. We were able to kind of emulate their ransomware attack on a little private network. And what was really exciting about that, Becky, was this idea of the visceral feeling that they got deep in their stomach or that their chest when they feel like, oh my gosh, this is falling apart. But they got to know the technology person before all this happened. So the idea there simply is practice, have a drill, just like you have a fire drill when you're a kid, right? You knew how to do it. So when something did happen, you were prepared. We're doing the same kind of things with cyber attacks, ransomware attacks, and that sort of stuff with the public school systems in Virginia.
Yeah, that's really important. I mean, we do this with our kids. It's like you can't just expect them to know what to do in an emergency.
Yeah.
You need to go over it and say, if this happens, do this. If that happens, do that instead. Um, it's the same thing. The more practice you have with something like that, then the better your response is going to be, because you don't you don't have to panic and go, "Oh my god, what do I do?" It's, we have a plan. We already know what to do. Maybe it's slightly different than what our plan was, but it's enough to guide people and help them figure out what to do next.
And you have to
Mm.
trust at that point. You have
Mhm.
to build the trust, because if you're doing it cold, you're doing it blind. You don't trust the people that are next to you, because you don't know what to trust or who to trust. But if you go
Mhm.
through the practice and your exercises, at least you have that modicum of trust.
And everybody knows their role, right? Everybody knows who's going to do what. Legal does this. IT does this. The PR team does this. I mean, everybody has a role. Everybody knows what needs to be done. And there's no, "Well, I thought you were going to do that." And,
Yeah.
wait, that's your responsibility, not mine. You've already got the RACI planned out. You already know who needs to do what. So there's not as big of a question of who's responsible for what things and stuff like that. Um, So how do you, with this AR, VR and AI and machine learning and all of this stuff coming together, how do you miti- not only mitigate the risks but get people willing to take risks, even if they're, smaller risks? I mean, there's a lot. There's a lot going on with all of the chat stuff and AI and everything. Like, I was just reading an article where a couple of lawyers got in trouble because they used some references from a chat AI, and they weren't correct references
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
cases. They
Yeah.
weren't real cases, or they were conflated with a couple of others. So you have to be careful about making sure what you're getting is accurate. So, there's a lot of predictive models out there, but how do you make sure?
Well, it's funny that you're talking about the generative AI stuff, right? So, and we've only been living in that world for real since what, November 30th of last year, with the
Mhm.
release of Chat GPT-3. Um, it's exploded. I mean, everybody's talking about it. But to your point, how do we get people to kind of experiment with it? My advice and counsel is to start small, focus on the corpus, okay, and that's the hardest part. Is finding a body of work, and let's say for just discussion purposes that a colleague of yours wrote a textbook on cybersecurity or something. Um, if you have the corpus of that book, or the PDF, if you will, just the book, you could probably create a large language model just out of that and just tune it to where it only uses that and only that. The problem occurs, most bodies of work link to other bodies of work. I mean, the whole academic community is built on extending literature, right? So the whole idea is to have links to this and links to that. And we've got about 30 years, 40 years of hyperlinks out there on everything that we do. In fact, now, some colleagues of mine did a large language model just on Shakespeare's works, because it was pretty much easy to get and didn't have links to other things, right? So no footnotes and things like that. But that's the trick. So if you have any kind of footnote or any kind of link or errant, hyperlink that is in the corpus that the AI is searching through, it could take you to some other link which is unprotected, and you have no idea where it goes. So having to kind of find a way to tune and test those environments is the hard part. The best way to answer your other question is, how do you get people to do it? Is you find things that mean something to them. You find something that they care about, and do it, like I said before, in an innovation lab kind of environment where you can kind of control certain factors and test them and prove them before you go out into production somewhere.
I think we should talk about what Kelly has said here in the chat about, after watching Westworld, everything in the
Oh yeah.
neighborhood of AI kind of freaks her out. I think that's kind of that's kind of the problem of a lot
I
of
like
a lot
Charles's
of
thing too. That's good.
yeah. Your Honor. Oh yeah, I should feature that one, because that is pretty good. Thank you. Alexa did that. Um so what's interesting is that AI is out there, and I
Yeah.
think people like to make it big and scary, but it doesn't have to be. I mean, yes, there's potential for abuse. There were how many different people came out against AI, like people that did research and built some of this and are saying it has potential to be used poorly. And I've got an example of one of those in the headlines. But also used well, it can be really cool and help you automate things and help make your workload easier. So, what do you think about balancing that scary potential for it being abused versus how useful it can be too?
Well, I think Kelly's right to be concerned. I mean, it can really freak you out. I'll give you a good example of where it can work well, and just in a typical student-teacher kind of relationship.
Mhm.
Right now, particularly right now, we've had years of students kind of doing the flipped learning model, where instead of the professor or the teacher standing up and teaching for the course plan, the teacher has them going out and looking for whatever they can find, anywhere they can find it on the internet, which is a scary thing in itself. And then coming back to class and then having to deal with all the various wrong answers and incorrect and biased stuff. We have a really good opportunity now to just focus, as I said before, on the corpus that you're trying to teach. And what's really cool about using a generative AI approach is that you can actually have an element for the students. So the questions can be generated for the students in a way that may be more Socratic, where it asks them, well, what did you think about this? And when you read about again Paul Revere and the two lanterns or whatever you were talking about earlier, how does that make you feel, or that kind of stuff. So these are more Socratic kind of style questions for the student. So, and it's focused just on that corpus that you give it. But what's really cool is that you can actually have another set of generative AI elements for the presenter or the teacher or the professor to say, when you are posing this question about Paul Revere and these two lanterns, be sure that you do this, this, and this. And this all comes from the same corpus. It's almost like having an instructor's guide and a student guide in the same kind of thing that's kind of generated for you together in a way that is just focused on the content. Now, of course, you got the content is king here. The content's got to be good for AI to be good.
Mhm.
Just like we said back in the old days, garbage in, garbage out. And I do have a concern about that, because a lot of what we have out there is in fact garbage, right? So how do you clean that up in a world where we spent the past 40 years adding garbage to the internet? So
Yeah. So, speaking of some of that AI and stuff and how companies are using it really interestingly, let's go ahead and circle back to Worldwide Developers Conference and the new Vision Pro, because this is really interesting to me. I watched the part of the keynote that had it, and there's a couple of videos out there now too. Um, but what I found fascinating was them taking all of this and creating something different than what we've seen before. And I'm seeing a lot of a lot of Apple geeks talking about it, and even talking about it last night at IT professionals networking event, talking about how they didn't just build a headset; it's a whole new thing, and it has potential. And some people are there's a lot of talking heads out there saying, "Oh, it's not gonna do anything." But they said the same thing about the iPod and the iPhone and many other things that have gone on to completely change the way we do things. So this is interesting. I mean, I always geek out about stuff like that anyway. So when I was watching their demos, I was like, "Oh, this is really cool."
right.
Um Charles is making a good point. Never buy version 1.0 of Apple hardware. It's not even going to be available for a while anyway. But one of the things people have been talking about is the price point. Like, it's definitely not a consumer sort of thing yet. So, do you think businesses are going to buy into this and play with it?
Oh, I don't think so. I think it's
Mm.
cool. It's neat. I think when it comes out as the pro version, I think you'll get a handful of people, creative folks, people like me. I'll get one because I work with them. But will your grandmother wear this thing? That's where the question that I had for the folks at Vision, for the Hololens and the Cisco folks, is that would my grandmother wear this? And it seemed kind of cumbersome, and it had those kind of ski goggle kind of things where you've got this kind of peripheral vision blocked, but it makes up for it because as you turn your head, it kind of picks it up very quickly, almost like being in a car. But you've been in a car yourself, particularly. I think which one's the worst? I think the Hondas are the worst, where they got this big giant bar right there that if you happen to not look at the right point at the right time, someone could be right in your path. It's bad. But the brain will fill in a lot of this stuff, by the way. I mean, the brain has an incredible ability to fill in all these kind of gaps. But I think you'll probably see the Apple come out with like an SE version, like they do with the iPhone. The Vision SE or something like that. And then once the price drops below, say 2,000, I think you'll probably sell millions of them. Really, because it's a cool thing. Because by itself, I mean, if you're looking at it just from entertainment, wow. I mean, can you imagine just having this 100-inch screen kind of thing with the pixels and things like that? That's great. The thing that kind of attracted me, and that I watched the 15-minute video, wherever it was, and they said about 3 seconds of it that was calm. You'll find it. Listen to the video again. It's about in the middle of the video. It had calm, and that's exactly the research that I'm doing with these folks at the medical center. Because that's, I think, where the magic of these kinds of devices really comes into play. Is that how they can affect our behavior? Not just gaming, not just entertainment, but can they help me be a better person? And one of the things that I think they would be remiss if they don't go down this road, Becky, and that is, can they use the Vision Pro to impact, kids and adults with ADHD? I think studies are emerging now that show that if you have these kind of calming kind of protocols and devices and techniques, you can actually eliminate some need. And I'm not a medical doctor, by the way, but some need for some medication. So I think that's really exciting research that's going on about some of these devices. So if Apple can kind of go down that road and participate in some of these studies that are going around some of these universities, I think the Vision Pro's got a great life ahead of it.
And one thing I found interesting was related to what you said earlier about the HoloLens not blocking your vision of being able to see around you. And so the part about sensing a person in the room and allowing, you to kind of look at them and see them, and the it'll change to where it'll reveal your eyes so the person can see that you're talking to them. That was really interesting because I haven't seen anything. Well, there's a lot of that I haven't seen before, but that was really interesting to me. The fact that you can still interact with people around you without having to take it off completely. Because what normally happens, you've got your earbuds in, and somebody comes up to you, and most of the time you have to pull one out of your ear or stop what you're listening to so you can hear them. And this is kind of sensing the environment around you. It can be really interesting, with the caveat that there's also a lot of potential personal information revealed too. What's in your environment, what's around you, where you're at, things like that.
I think it's really cool too, is that, back to Kelly's point about Westworld and things. I mean, I'm of a generation where the past 20 years, there's been so many movies out there, Tom Cruise movie, where he's up there, and I forget all these names, but, he's just flipping things around and watching
Minority
it.
Report.
Minority Report, that's it. Or all these things where people kind of live in this kind of, as you said, this kind of MR or XR kind of world, where it's just frightening of what they do with it. I wish they would do a movie that would show how the benefits of it, right? Like the ability to say, oh, my grandpa is able to live alone longer because he has these kind of assisted technologies, but those don't sell tickets, right? Those don't sell movie tickets, So that's the bad part about it, is that we get exposed to all the negative, with very little of the positive. So I think hopefully there'll be a balance someday.
Yeah. Yeah, hopefully. So I put another poll up around what people thought of the Vision Pro. So you're welcome to vote on that if y'all want to. And I also put a couple of articles that I came across as I was doing some research on this about, is this going to be better than MetaQuest or just completely different? And as well as um, people's reluctance to wear wearables. because of it could be that it does kind of cut you off from your environment, or they're heavy and they're fatiguing, or they don't have very long battery life. So all of these things are, you know, definitely things that they'll have to overcome.
Yeah, we're still early days, but I think,
Mhm.
we also think about what happened about even what 10 years ago, almost now with Google Glass and how it didn't work out. It just wasn't the world wasn't ready for that. So you're going to see just like in a lot of these little cycles where a lot of stuff coming out of Silicon Valley or other places that are innovative, are going to be accepted or not, and sometimes you're not going to be able to tell. Sometimes people go for an iPhone like this and it changes everything. Sometimes they get something that doesn't quite set the world on fire.
Yeah, Betamax versus,
Yeah, yeah,
VCRs. So
mhm.
speaking of, like AI and things like that, one of the articles I pulled from the news was actually about Cisco bringing generative AI to WebEx and Cisco Security Cloud. And I found this really interesting because they just had Cisco Live this week, in Vegas,
In the
and
same week as what? Which was like crazy that Cisco Live and Apple same time. Crazy.
yeah, exactly, but apparently they still had a good turnout for that.
They did. They did. They did.
So they're talking about if you miss a WebEx meeting, this catch me up feature can catch up on missed interactions and give a summary of key points and action items. Uh, it'll also produce highlights from their asynchronous video chat vidcast. So Cisco's been investing in machine learning and these large language models to do some of these really interesting things. They're also talking about their agent for the contact center. Agent answers generate a complete summary of the issues discussed with the customer. So this will be interesting for support people that use that, as well as they're trying to simplify security operations and increase efficacy. And so that's going to play into their Cisco Security Cloud with having a SOC assistant. Just really fascinating to see how companies like that are, trying to use some of this new technology.
It's brave new world, as Huxley would say.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got a
Yeah.
little bit of time left, so let's talk about a couple of other things around AI. Like the FBI is warning of increased use of AI generated deepfakes in sextortion schemes. And this jumped out at me because, you know, there have been instances of people getting ransomed for pictures and things like that of them. But now what some people are doing is taking pictures that you share on social media, and it only takes a couple of profile pictures, and then making these deep fakes that look like you have made some sort of explicit tape or video or something, and then using that to ransom people. So the FBI is actually seeing an uptick in this and warning people to be careful about that and really think about what you're what you're sharing online and things like that. It kind of takes all the fun out of sharing all your cool photos on Facebook. Um, or at least lock it down. Um, Kelly says what freaks me out about Westworld is not the robot uprising. It's the people responsible who are continually making bad decisions that led to the robot uprising. So yeah, no doubt. And speaking of uprisings, Reddit is in the midst of an uprising right now because they're getting ready to charge for their API access, like charge a lot. And one of the most popular Reddit apps, Apollo, is shutting down on June 30th because it's going to be what everybody is calling, what developers are calling an unreasonable amount to access its API. Uh, I guess it has been free in the past, and there's a lot of uproar on Reddit right now, and there's actually some protests planned in a bunch of the subreddits, um, because they're not going to be able to afford the prices. The developer of Apollo said that Reddit's charging 12,000 for 50 million requests, and given the number of people that use Apollo, that would result in a 20 million per year charge. That's completely unfeasible for him to pay because it's a free app, from what I understand. And yeah, it's just the article also said that they told him that there were some inefficiencies where he could make it better, but then they didn't tell him what they were or anything. And it's such short notice that none of these apps can change their model, start charging, and do all these things in just within 30 days. It's just not going to happen. So a lot of them are shutting down, and a lot of subreddits are going dark, I think next week,
Yeah,
in
it's too bad.
protest.
Yeah.
Yeah. So a lot of stuff going on. And let's see what else. If you haven't seen, if you're using Move It, by the way, there's been exploitation of a critical flaw, and a lot of different organizations, big and small, are falling prey to the exploitation of this vulnerability. Started over Memorial Day, and the reason some of the researchers are calling this a mass exploitation, even though it's a relatively small number of confirmed breaches, researchers are describing it that way because of the severity of this. They usually reserve it for involving many attackers, many targets. There's only one known attacker, Clop, a Russian-speaking group that's among the most prolific and active ransomware actors. Mm, But they're making an exception because what Rapid7 said, we aren't seeing commodity threat actors or low skill attackers throwing exploits here, but the exploitation of available high value targets globally across a wide range of org sizes, verticals, and geolocations tips the scale on classifying it as a widespread event or widespread threat. So if you're using it, maybe we'll have this article linked and everything. Just spread the word that, because this was a file sharing thing over the web, and some people were using it just straight over the web, and there were a lot of some big orgs that got hit too. I think British Airways was one of them, and there were several others that got hit with this exploitation. So eek.
Yeah.
And one last one, remember, I don't know, a few weeks ago we talked about Tesla and how employees were watching the videos coming from the cameras, and they weren't supposed to be. Well, Amazon just got hit with a $5.8 million thing from the FTC because Ring is suffering from the same problem. Staff and contractors were caught snooping on customer videos, and they were able to view, download, and transfer customer sensitive video data for their own purposes because they had a dangerously overbroad access and lax attitude toward privacy and security. The FTC alleged on at least 2 occasions Ring employees improperly accessed the private Ring videos of women. Of course it was women that they, were stalking in particular. The thing I want to take away from this is check your access policies and don't give broad access to anyone and everyone. If they don't need it, then don't give it to them. That's like, rule number 1, right?
Yeah, but no one reads the EULAs, so that's the thing. They just click, 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 click.
No, you can't say no one because I do. I actually do.
Most everyone.
Yeah. Okay. That's all right. But no, I at least skim it very thoroughly.
Yeah, Kelly's got a good
for stuff
point.
like
Least
that.
privilege. That's how you do it. Least privilege.
That's exactly it, Kelly.
And I think if the Trade Commission wants to do anything, they can do a lot with how these EULAs are written, as opposed to opting in versus opting out, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, definitely. And they need to call out things like that more clearly, but their internal practices need to be better. And maybe that needs to be, part of some of the audits and certifications. Like, are you doing this properly? Like, I haven't read ISO 27000 in a while to see if that's, like one of the things that you're supposed to be doing. Then if you don't, then you get dinged. Um, the EFF reads all the U lists for you and will summarize any changes too. That's good. That's good, Charles. I will, especially if there's a new one that has changed, I'll try to skim through and at least see,
Yeah.
look at the headings and read a little bit of each section just to make sure there's nothing weird going on. Um,
And that
but
might be
yeah,
a good use of AI, by the way, is have AI, kind of, check your privileges and, make sure that you have the least allowable, and then you can tune those things. Part of the problem you have, and this goes with any kind of software app you may have, the trouble is we tend to have too many, and just like you have vampire accounts that you pay monthly for your streaming thing and that sort of stuff. We always intend to go fix those. We always intend to go and take care of that. But what is it Mom used to say? Road to hell was paved with good intentions, right? So we got to be careful, and maybe an AI can help. A bot can help us with that. I don't know. I'm just spitballing here.
yeah. I mean, there are services that help you with vampire charges, so maybe they can,
Yeah.
double check some of your stuff too. But I mean, that just should be part of a good practice is only allowing people to access what they need to and not give it everything.
Yeah. There's a way
Yeah,
forward.
Charles. Then you have to
Yeah.
give AI permission to read all the things.
And suddenly it's
So
Westworld. We crazy humans, right? That's what it is. We're
yeah,
crazy.
or an episode of Black Mirror, right? Yikes. All right. Well, we are officially out of time and a little bit over. So thank you for those of you who stayed with us and kept going a little bit longer. Um, I'm interested to see where this goes. I mean, there's a lot, so much in the last 20 years has just exploded in technology. And I think it's kind of cool. I'm kind of interested to see where things go next in the helpful ways. Try to avoid Westworld, which is another conversation for another time around ethics. We've talked a lot. What we do for fun, we talk about ethics and AI, don't we, Ken?
Yes, we do.
We
Quite a
have.
lot.
We've
Yeah.
had
Yeah.
several
Yeah.
conversations about that. So, just keeping an eye on using things responsibly. And the government is actually trying to look at passing some new laws relatively quickly around stuff like this to kind of keep things in check. But whether or not that'll happen is another story. But I saw a couple headlines around that too. So we'll keep an eye out and see what's happening. Maybe we
Well,
should
thanks for
have
sharing.
Dr. Wilk on
Sure.
and
Yeah.
talk about
Well,
the
I was going to say,
chat stuff.
I was gonna ask your audience if they want to reach out to me via LinkedIn or whatever else, and connect and learn what we continue to do at the Institute and also throughout Virginia and beyond. I'm happy to talk about all the cool things that we're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. You're welcome to post that in the community too. Ooh, post an update there.
That's a great idea. Maybe I
Yeah.
get my AI bot to help me with that.
All right. Well, thank you all for joining us. It's good to be back. And we will see you next Friday at the same time. And hope you have a great weekend.
Thanks, folks.
Thanks,
Take care.
everybody.